What's growing on, gardeners? Today I'm going to show you how to build the perfect raised bed. This bed is affordable, strong, will last a decade or longer, can be built using basic tools without much skill, and can be tailored to any dimensions that you need. This proven design is what I am using for all of the new beds I'm putting in my garden, and I can't wait to share it with you all.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
The example raised garden bed that I will be building in this video will be 7 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 16 inches deep, but you can tailor your design to make your bed as long or as deep as you want. Want it longer? Just use longer boards. Want it deeper? Just use wider boards or stack another row of boards to increase the depth. The only caution that I will give you is to never make your raised garden beds wider than 4 feet because the typical human can only reach about 2 feet. If you exceed 4 feet of width, you will struggle to reach the center of your bed. You can make your bed narrower than 4 feet if you want, but don't exceed 4 feet in width unless you're like an NBA point guard or something. Throughout this video, I will be using a number of different materials and tools to make building this raised garden bed simple. I will place links to everything I possibly can down in the video description. Obviously, the wood is something that you will need to pick up locally. All of the wood that I'm using in this video to build the raised bed is number 2 prime pressure treated lumber rated for ground contact that I got from my local Lowe's store. Which brings me to my next point. Do not use untreated lumber or lumber not rated for ground contact to build your raised beds, or they will only last a few years. I use pressure treated lumber because it is affordable and readily available at any big box store. All of my original raised garden beds use it, and they are 7 years old and show no signs of rot despite my incredibly wet, humid climate. 10 years of life is easily achievable using proper pressure treated lumber. No, pressure treated lumber is not toxic for gardening and hasn't been so for nearly 3 decades in the United States. Modern residential pressure treated lumber is treated with copper, which is, by the way, often directly sprayed on all the fruits and vegetables that you are buying at the store, even the organic food, because you can buy organic certified liquid copper concentrate. Copper solution has been used in gardening since the 1800s. I'll link to a detailed video both above and down in the video description as to why I believe it is okay to use pressure treated lumber treated with copper solution in your garden, but at the end of the day, it is your decision. Woods like redwood, cedar, and cypress are somewhat naturally rot-resistant alternatives to pressure-treated lumber, but they still likely will not last as long as pressure-treated lumber that is rated for ground contact, and that wood will cost you several times more. It's up to you. Each raised bed requires the following materials: 4 2x8 boards cut to 7 feet, 4 2x8 boards cut to 4 feet, 2 2x4 boards cut to 4 feet, 2 2x4 boards cut to 80 inches, 8 2x4 boards cut to 14 inches, and a box of number 10 3-inch wood screws. The tools I will be using are a drill, impact driver, speed square, measuring tape, drill bit, gloves, eye protection, and a pencil. A circular saw and Japanese pull saw were initially used to pre-cut all of the lumber boards to length. I'm going to build this raised garden bed in 2 identical layers on my concrete driveway apron because this is the best level surface that I have. Then I'm going to move both sections into my garden for final assembly because the final raised bed is going to be so heavy that I will never be able to move it. Do not build this raised bed in its entirety outside of its final location, or you are going to have a horrible time picking it up and relocating it. Each individual section on its own is fairly heavy, but it is manageable to move them with 2 people. So please keep that in mind. Another thing that you'll want to do is lay the best face of each board top side up, because this number 2 prime lumber, well, they're all going to have knots and little imperfections in them. So we want to make sure that the nice side faces out so our raised beds look as good as possible, and we place the knotted sides facing inward where no one will see them. We will also want to make sure that when it comes to the tops of the boards, that we have the nice side facing up. And if there's any imperfections on the tops of the boards, then we face them downward where no one is going to see them. The first thing we will do is we will lay out our width boards, and then using a speed square, we will draw a line 3/4 of an inch in from all of the ends, because this is where our screws are going to be, and the individual joists are 1.5 inches thick. So that 3/4 inch line is going to have our screws pretty much centered when we mount this board. Then in an assembly-like fashion, we will take our drill and we will pre-drill 3 holes on each side of the width boards in line with the pencil line that we just made. Pre-drilling the lumber is very important so we don't accidentally split the wood when we are installing the screws. Now, using the impact driver, I'm going to partially install screws in each of the holes and insert them about just 1/4 of the way in. Now we have our width board lined up against 2 of the length boards. Now we are going to start installing our screws. Now we don't want to install the screws completely from the get-go because the lumber is going to try to twist on you. So I'm going to embed each screw about another 50% of the way until it makes contact with the length board, and then I'm going to finish that process for all 3 screws, and then if they try to twist on me, I'll be able to twist the lumber back in the direction I want it to go. Then once everything is lined up, we will actually fully embed the screws. So now I have the bottom half of my raised bed, and I'm happy with the way it came out. Now, in order to build the second half of my raised bed, I'm going to have to move this into my garden to make room so I can build the other half here on my driveway apron. So I'm going to take my garden cart and I'm going to use that to wheel my first half of the raised garden bed over and into my garden, as well as some of the other wood that I'm going to use for railings and supports to lock the 2 halves together. Then once I move all that stuff into my garden, I'm going to build the second half of the raised bed on the driveway apron and bring that into my garden. Remember, don't try to move this yourself. It's pretty heavy. I don't have another person to help me at the time, so I'm going to use my garden cart to accomplish this. Now we have both halves of our raised bed stacked on top of each other, which basically fits perfectly because we built them to the exact same specification. Now we are going to connect the 2 halves together and also install a railing system all around the bed because I want to be able to sit on my raised bed as I work. It is a lifesaver. And in order to do that, I am going to use these 14-inch long piece of 2x4s that I cut, and that is going to both act as a bracing system that sucks in the sides of the bed so everything is uniform, because there's a little bit of bowing on each of these individual pieces of wood, and it's also going to add extra support for the railing to sit on, because the railings are made out of 2x4s, which are 3.5 inches wide, and this joist is only 1.5 inches thick, so you can't rest a 2x4 on that without additional bracing. Now, if you want a bigger seat, you can make railings out of 2x6s and get yourself a 4x4 post and cut that into 14-inch sections and use that. That's an option as well, but this is the cheapest way to do it. Now, I cut 2 different sizes for the railings to sit on. I cut 4-foot pieces, which are going to go width-wise, and that is going to be the full width of the raised bed because I think it's less wasteful this way. You basically get 2 perfect width railings out of an 8-foot piece of lumber with very little extra to spare. So it's a really efficient use, and I'm going to bring you in closer and show you how I do this. Now, when we install the wooden braces, whether it is lengthwise or widthwise, we are going to install braces in all 4 corners and at the center, both in the width and the length. Now, if I were using 10-foot long boards or 12-foot long boards, I probably would have to add 2 braces in the center, equidistantly spaced. So the way I'm going to do this is, when I place this brace in the corner, it has to go this way. It has to be parallel to the length board, not the width board, because if I made it parallel with the width board, when I place my railing on top of it, it's only going to be able to support this railing. It won't be able to support the railing that goes this way. So when I spin it in this direction, it is wide enough that I can both support this railing, and then it has a nice chunk left over right here that can support the length railing as well. So I'm going to take my speed square, and on the length side of my raised bed, I'm going to choose a point about 1.5 to 2 inches away from the edge of each of the length board, and I'm going to draw a pencil line down. And then I'm going to pre-drill the locations with 2 screw holes in each board. I'm going to choose the top and the bottom of the top board, and the top and the center of the bottom board, because I purposefully cut these braces an inch shorter than the depth of the bed, so it would give me a little bit of wiggle room. Then on the width side of the board, I'm going to choose a location 2¼ inches in, because that is going to give me 1.5 inches for the joist width, plus another 3/4 inch in, so the screws go dead center into the 2x4 brace. And just like before, we will pre-drill our holes and pre-install our screws. Then we are going to place our brace, and we want this brace to be, once again, parallel to the length side because of the way I cut my railings. So we want to make sure that the brace is roughly flush with the top of the raised garden bed, because that is going to support the corners of our railing. So once we have that in place, we are then going to finish installing our screws. And then we will do the same thing to the other 3 corners of the raised bed. Now we have all 4 of our corner braces on. We have to add the 4 braces in the center of each side of the raised bed. Now, because this bed is only 7 feet long, I think 1 center brace is going to be enough. But if your raised bed was, say, 10 or 12 feet long, well, now you're probably going to have to come in 3 or 4 feet on each side in order to completely suck in this board, because the boards will bow a little bit. This is all normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape measure, and I'm going to measure this board, which is exactly 7 feet, and I'm going to pick 42 inches, which is 3.5 feet, and that is going to be dead center in this board. So again, I'm going to take my speed square, and I'm going to run it down at that mark, and then I'm going to pre-drill some holes, pre-install some screws, and then install our 2x4 brace so the top is perfectly flush and centered with the raised bed. Now all of the boards are nice and flush. I'm going to go around to the other 3 sides and do the same thing. Now we're going to install the railings, and we're going to begin on the width side, not the length side. So this has been cut to be the exact length that I want. And then once we have the board where we want it, I'm going to pre-drill 1 hole on each side to hold it in place. Now that that one's in, we'll make sure that this side is lined up and everything is flush, and it is. So now that this is secured and flushed, we're going to install 2 more screws, 1 there and 1 here on each side. And then here there is another brace. So we're going to install 1 through the center of the joist, and then 1 through the center of the brace. And now that the width board has been attached, we are going to install the 2 length boards next. And we will place the second width board last. And the reason why is just in case we made a mistake cutting the length boards. And as you can see, I wasn't perfect with this cut because I used a circular saw to do it. So it's literally the width of the saw blade that makes all the difference. But you know what? It's close enough. It's good enough. I'm happy with the way this turned out. So let's install the final screws. Looking good. And just like that, my raised bed garden is done. I am so happy with the way this turned out, and I can't wait to take you in for a closer look. But I can't right now, because it is pitch black outside. It may not look that way, but that's because I have the f-stop of my lens cranked all the way down to 2.8, and my shutter speed is on 30. So if I took you in for a closer look, it would blur and pixelate. Tomorrow is supposed to be a beautiful day, and I will take you in for a closer look then when the sun comes up. But for now, I believe in squeezing every drop of daylight out of these wonderful spring days. So now that it's daylight again, this is the final product. I am so happy with the way this came out. It is nice and straight, nice and uniform, and it looks pretty professionally built. I am not a good woodworker. I'm actually fairly lousy when it comes to building things, and I can do this in only about 90 minutes. So I know that you can do it as well. So if you're worried about building something like this, don't be. You can do this as a novice fairly quickly, and you can see the raised beds that I'm putting together right now. This is shaping up to be a really nice new raised bed garden. And here is an inside shot of the raised garden bed. You can see how those 2x4 supports that I built are holding the two halves of the raised garden bed together, while also giving the raised garden bed support for that railing for you to sit on to make gardening more comfortable. And then here is a shot of the width portion of the bed that shows the same supports. And once again, one final shot of the railing system so you can sit your butt down while you are gardening. This makes things so much easier on your back, let me tell you. All my new raised garden beds are following this design. This raised garden bed was made out of the old 6-year-old perimeter beds that I stripped down, and I repurposed and recycled that wood. Then my 2 new beds right here I built out of brand new lumber, and I'm going to build 2 more to go into that available space over there. So now that I have showed you all my favorite raised garden bed designs, some of you may be wondering, why did I decide to go with a wood bed design and not those modular metal raised garden beds? I thought you liked them. Well, I do. Metal beds are great for a number of reasons, and I recommend them to folks all the time that are working with limited space. Maybe you don't have a means of sourcing or picking up lumber. Maybe you don't have the tools or you physically can't build the wooden beds. I have metal raised garden beds all over my yard, squeezed in tight places where wood beds wouldn't work so well. But for my core garden, wood beds are superior. They're sturdier, you can attach PVC hoops to them and outfit them with covers like frost cloth, insect netting, and shade cloth, which is critical where I live. And you can sit on them like I'm doing right now, which makes my life so much easier. And I think they look better. Nothing beats the beauty of uniform wood beds in my opinion. And if you use proper pressure treated lumber, they should last just about as long as those metal beds. To me, the ultimate gardening setup uses both, where your big beds are wood beds and your supplemental beds are metal where it makes sense to use them. I'll place some links down in the video description to the affordable raised garden beds made of metal that I use as well. And that right there is how to build what I think is the perfect raised garden bed. And remember, these dimensions are completely malleable, so make them bigger or smaller as you need for your unique situation. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. Remember, I have a full list of tools and materials down in the video description with links to everything that you can possibly source online as well for your convenience. For everything else I use in real life in my garden, that stuff is all linked down in the video description in my Amazon storefront link. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life in my garden. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Dale, we have to start being very careful in our walks around the pond. Look, there's the first gator of the year. The very first gator of the year. They're back out. Alligator is back. What do you think about that, buddy? You always have to be careful when you're walking around ponds in southeastern North Carolina because there might be a gator sunning. Oh, he's gone. He's hiding. Oh, there he is. There he is. There's a big guy right there. Look at him go. Isn't that cool, Dale? Look, you guys have the same snoot. You have the same snoot, and it's just as cute. All right, buddy. Let's get going.